Chapter 336 Feast for the World. Zijin saw Wu Gang looked and showed his teeth and grinned. Outsiders couldn't see what was happening. But with Kangtia and Wu Gang's cultivation, they were able to see Zijin all of a sudden, restored to his original body, that tall golden-colored giant ape. It ... is you. Wu Gang was startled by Little Gold's revealed main body, and then his heart was overwhelmed with emotion. Even a small monkey that had followed Kangtia at the beginning had now become so unfathomable. He was able to sense that this little monkey in disguise in front of him was extremely powerful. Hehe, I've just returned from the Heavenly Dao sect, and I'm preparing to visit my old friends from the Great Tang country, Kangtia said with a smile. Then his eyes fell on Wu Gang's broken arm. His eyes narrowed, and he said in a deep voice, "The wound is highly poisonous. If you don't remove it, you won't be able to grow this arm back. You met a strong person from the poison sect." Well, it's a poison sect powerhouse at the out-of-body stage. This kind of poison, the Heavenly Dao sect has an antidote, but I don't have enough contribution points. ... Karma. Wu Gang looked grim. The tiger-headed little boy next to him, but raised his face and said seriously, "Father, don't worry. When I worship the Heavenly Dao sect, I will definitely help you find the antidote." The little boy's innocent face was very serious at the moment, and that large eye was filled with a confident glow. Kangtia was stunned. At this instant, it was as if he saw himself in his teenage years. Even after the blow of 9 failed foundation establishment attempts, he was still incomparably confident. "Is this your child? What's the name? How old?" Kangtia couldn't help but ask. Little Jin was very curious and touched the little boy's head, laughing. And then he also took out a protective lower-grade treasure weapon and gave it to the little boy. Wu Gang's eyes shrunk. He naturally recognized that this was an inferior treasure weapon, and immediately waved his hand and said, "It's too expensive." ... Double quotes. However, Little Gold was too lazy to pay attention to him and muttered, "It's not for you. Master Monkey sees this kid as agreeable. Don't mind your own business." Wu Gang smiled bitterly at his words, so he could only let the little boy thank Little Jin. The little boy was very polite, collected the gift, and quickly bowed to Little Jin with an innocent smile. "Thank you, Uncle." Little Jin was called Uncle for the first time, and couldn't help but laugh out loud. Wu Gang dotingly touched the little boy's head and softly said, "I named him Wu Knife, because he has loved knives since he was a child. He's 6 years old this year, but he has already built his foundation. His talent is better than mine. He will definitely surpass me in the future." Saying that, a hint of pride appeared in his eyes. Kangtia sighed. He felt that Wu Gang was completely changed. Where was this still the same overbearing warrior Wu Gang at the beginning? Completely an ordinary father who doted on his child. "Let me take a look at your arm. Maybe I can help you heal it," Kangtia suddenly said. It was rare to meet an acquaintance from back then. He felt the need to help Wu Gang. Wu Gang nodded at his words, looking very bashful. He had long since lost his heart to fight for supremacy, and he didn't care if his broken arm could be repaired or not. However, Kangtia was so polite, he couldn't refute it. The poison sect's poison is unique, but this person's cultivation is still too weak. Kangtia stretched out a finger on top of Wu Gang's broken arm, and immediately operated the star-absorbing technique, sucking out all the toxins from his broken arm. Wu Gang's face changed. After so many years, he was very familiar with this kind of toxin, and at this moment, when he saw the toxin being sucked out, he was instantly delighted. Immediately after, he took an elixir and operated his true essence to repair his broken arm. But in a while, an arm grew back where his broken arm was. As a Yuinging stage powerhouse, he had the strength. "Father, your injury is healed." The little boy by the side, Wu Dagger, was instantly incomparably excited, jumping up and down. And then he didn't forget to give Kang Chia his thanks. "Thank you, uncle." "Thank you," Wu Gang also said with a face full of gratitude. "You're welcome. It's just a show of hands." Kang Chia shook his head, then touched Wu Dagger's little head and said seriously, "Little one, remember, one can be heartless, but not unfilial." "Well, uncle, I know." Wu Dagger nodded his head as if he understood. On the side, Wu Gang was pondering. He suddenly asked in a deep voice, as if he seemed to have made up his mind about something, "I wonder if senior brother is willing to accept this son. Are you saying that you want me to accept him as my disciple?" Kang Chia was a bit surprised, although his strength was good. But after all, he hadn't been cultivating for a long time. Even his 3 senior brothers hadn't taken on a disciple, so naturally he had never considered such a thing. "Well, this son's talent far exceeds mine. If I were to guide him, it would only bury his talent. And in this great Tang country, apart from you, I can't think of anyone else who can teach him." Wu Gang softly said. There was a hint of supplication in his eyes, being able to make such a gesture, or to a former enemy. It could be seen that he loved and cared for his child. Well, Kang Chia sniffed and fell into deep thought, hesitation in his eyes. He didn't want to accept a disciple so soon yet, as he didn't have much time to teach his disciple. After all, he still had to cultivate himself. However, seeing Wu Gang's prayerful face, he felt bad about refusing. "Kid, take a closer look at this kid's talent. Maybe it's not a bad idea to accept it." Suddenly, Emperor Don's voice came from his mind. Kang Chia was slightly puzzled. Then his divine thoughts went out of his body and probed into Wu Dagger's body. Suddenly, his gaze shrank and a hint of disbelief appeared in his eyes. Special bloodline. Inside Wu Dagger's body, Kang Chia was surprised to find that this son's dantian, surprisingly, showed a curved and slanted state. Resembling a sharp knife, this situation was different from the norm, reminding him of a special bloodline in the legends. Right, if old me is not mistaken, this son was born with a blade body. Although it is not as good as your Kang Chia hegemony blood, it is still a special bloodline that is relatively forward, Emperor Dan said. Born with a blade body. No wonder this son has been fond of swords since he was a child. With his talent, I'm afraid that his achievements above the Tao of the Blade will be extraordinary in the future. Kang Chia nodded slightly, somewhat impressed. Your self-created hegemony blade will also need an heir in the future. And this son is a perfect fit, Emperor Dan said. But boy, I've only created 2 styles of hegemony blade now. Kang Chia smiled bitterly at his words. Hey, is it better to be prepared than to suffer? This son has such talent, rather than letting it go to someone else. It's better to take it for yourself. Emperor Dan heatedly laughed. All right. Kang Chia finally agreed. He then looked at Wu Gang's father and son and said, how about this? I'll first accept him as a registered disciple. And when the next Heavenly Tao Sect disciple acceptance ceremony is held, if he can pass my test, I'll formally accept him. Good. Wu Gang nodded joyfully. He was still very confident in Wu Dagger's talent. Since he had accepted Wu Dao as a registered disciple, Kang Chia could not help but make some gesture. At that moment, he passed on the first style of the Overlord Blade, Broken Sky, to Wu Dao. This style is called Broken Sky. Although it's only one style, it's enough for you to use before you break through the Yuanying stage. Kang Chia pointed a finger to Wu Dao's brow. As an outbreathing stage powerhouse, he was fully capable of transmitting the method directly through his divine thoughts. Wukong on the side was very shocked and surprised at the same time. He couldn't be more familiar with this move, as he was defeated by this blade back then. From this, it could be seen that Kang Chia is genuinely willing to accept Wukong's blade, rather than casually shrugging it off, which made him very happy. With a master like Kang Chia, coupled with Wu Knife's talent, Wu Gang believed that his child's future would be so bright and brilliant. The three of them continued to chat for some more time before parting ways. Kang Tia and Zijin still had to rush to the imperial capital. Before leaving, Kang Tia learnt from Wu Gang that Qian Sanshao had long ago arranged a banquet in the imperial capital for all the dignitaries of the Great Tang country, and Wu Gang had also received the invitation not long ago and would be rushing there soon. The two agreed to meet again in the imperial capital. I didn't expect that a joking remark would be taken seriously by Fatty 3. On his way to the imperial capital, Kang Tia was a little speechless. All the way there, he heard all the news of the overlord's return and feast for the world. It could be imagined that Qian Sanshao had already spread this matter throughout the entire Great Tang country. Many cultivators had rushed to the imperial capital during this period of time, even though most of them did not have invitations. They wanted to go and see the hustle and bustle, and in the meantime, they wanted to see the hegemony king's elegance. Perhaps Kang Tia was only just a minor celebrity in the cultivation world, but in the Great Tang country, Kang Tia and Zhao Wuji were almost synonymous with geniuses and powerhouses. Many parents used them as role models when educating their children, and from this, it was clear that his image had long been deeply rooted in the Great Tang country. Although this was a bit high profile, Kang Tia didn't care. He also wanted to see some acquaintances before traveling to the Land of Kings. After all, after reaching the out-of-body stage, if he wanted to go further, it wouldn't be something that could be done in just a few years, and perhaps the next time he came back would be 100 years later. Kang Tia had heard Qian Sanshao say that Zhao Wuji had also come back to visit when he was traveling to the King's Land, and the sensational scene at that time wasn't much smaller than this time. This is considered a return home in clothes, isn't it? Kang Tia laughed. Then he performed the sublime chop and directly took little gold and instantly traveled away. But in just an hour, they arrived at the imperial capital from Fengdu City. Nowadays, with Kang Tia's cultivation level, he could completely not worrying about the exertion caused by executing the sublime beheading, and the distance of the instantaneous movement had also increased by a lot, which was very practical in terms of catching up on the road. When Kang Tia returned to the Great Tang country, he had already notified Qian Sanshao through the communication jade slip. Therefore, when Kang Tia was traveling in Fengdu City, Qian Sanshao had already announced this news, which immediately caused the entire imperial capital to boil. Junior, when will Tiana be back? Heavy Iron King's royal mansion, Kang Tia's grandfather, Wang Tiexiong, stood up again and asked. Why did he say again? It was because Wang Tiexiong had already asked hundreds of times. At this moment, Qian Sanshao, who was opposite him, revealed a helpless smile. Just rest assured, your old man. Just now Kang Tia has already notified over. There is still an hour left before he arrives at the imperial capital. Hehe, Elder Wang, just sit down and wait at ease. Anyway, it's all back. Isn't it the same to see him sooner or later? On the side, Master Feng Yuan and the Qian family head also said with a smile. Wang Tiexiong was immediately a little embarrassed, so he sat down and waited at ease. Just at this moment, the space was distorted, and then with a bang, it shattered, revealing a one-person-sized spatial crack. Grandpa, third youngster, Elder Qian, and Master Feng Yuan. From within the crack, two figures suddenly stepped out. One of them was wearing a purple robe, and underneath his soft, shiny black hair, two deep gazes were transmitted as he looked at the four people within the warm mansion with a smile on his face. Kang Tia, Tiana. The four of them, Wang Tiexiong, stood up at once with a look of surprise on their faces. Wang Tiexiong's change was very great, appearing even younger. Kang Tia's divine thoughts probed and found that Grandpa's cultivation had already reached the peak of the 9th level of the Yuanying stage, and was only waiting for the comprehension of the will to be able to cross the threshold of the tribulation. Kang Tia was not surprised by this. The last time the third youngest came back, He let some of the 6 turns golden Dan bring it back with him. It could be said that Wang Tianxiong's current cultivation level was completely piled up with pills. An ordinary person could tell at a glance, because Wang Tianxiong's current intention was only 30% of the realm, which matched his cultivation at the peak of the 9th level of the Yuanying stage at all. If only there were treasures that could allow one to directly comprehend will. Kang Chia couldn't help but think in his heart as he looked at the kind grandfather in front of him.